Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Models Workshop, Just the Facts, for your frequently asked questions about miniature scale models and everything that you could possibly think of. Probably not everything, because that would just be too weird. But today it is Larry, joined by Peter once again.
Hello.
I promise you everyone, we will have other people on this. It's just everyone is busy and Peter and I have no life. So...
Well, speak for yourself.
That's
pretty fair, actually.
Yes, because my wife left me so she could go watch the Avengers. Too soon? Yeah. So, as you can hear, we actually were recording this during the release weekend of the Avengers. And sad panda, I haven't been able to go see it either. I am avoiding social media. But this episode is not about the Avengers. It is about zenithal highlighting. So if you want to be totally badass and everything and be the Avenger of painting, then you want to know how to properly apply a zenithal highlighting when you're first doing a miniature. Now, Peter, what is zenithal highlighting?
Wow, this is a deja vu moment for me. So zenithal highlighting is the approximation of sunlight on your miniature. So it's like a really large-scale version of object source lighting, which we've talked about before, and it is literally making the sun shine down on your miniature and putting the right shadows in the right place and the right light in the right place, but from a faraway ambient source light.
Now, it also does not have to be sunlight. It can also be torchlight. It can also be a pinpoint, something very specific to a model. But basically, Peter got it. It's applying a absolutely huge blown out highlight. So when I do zenithal highlighting, what I like to do personally, as an example, I just did a chibi bust from Midnight Heroes. What I did is I primed the entire miniature in yellow. Then I went through with purple and I flipped the model upside down and I hit the model from about probably about 30-degree angle all the way around on the bottom with the purple. So I was looking to try to catch the underneath the ears, underneath the nose, the bottom of the chin, the bottom of the plate armor, and the bottom of the hair. I let it dry, and then I went and I grabbed white and flipped her back over, and I did the same thing on the top. I went and tried to catch the model from about 30 to 45 degrees. Now, since it had a flat surface, what I did was I popped it on my Lazy Susan, held my airbrush out at about 45 degrees, and then slowly rotated it while moving backwards or up and down from 0 to 40 degrees with my airbrush, lightly hitting it with white until I got a nice coverage of white. I wouldn't say hit it and make it oh my god, it's glowing white. You want it where it looks white, but you can tell it's not pure white. And then after that, I dropped it down to the 40 to 60 degree range and hit it with a little bit more white. But I wanted the yellow still to show through, so I got that nice gradient from the white on top down into the yellows, and then it has a band where it was almost still that pure yellow, my primer, down into the purple. And that's personally how I do my zenithal highlighting when I first start a model. Now, the colors might change. I typically will not use pure black. I'll use a lot of either dark blues or dark purples. I find them to portray shadows a lot better than pure black does, but I have been known on occasion, depending on the model, to use pure black as well. Now, for the highlight portion, I will typically use pure white. Now, you can also, if you want to, say if you're doing something under torchlight, you can use a yellow or an orange for your zenithal highlighting as well. But if it's going to be sun, outdoors, or something along those lines, then white will be fine. And also keep in mind that if you do it in white, that doesn't mean you have to stop there. You can always shade it back down or glaze it back down to a nice yellow, blue, and orange, green, whatever the color is that you're going to be wanting to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, if you are going to be using black, white, and grey, that at least gives you your brightness values without worrying about the color, and then you can then glaze in. So if you're doing torchlight, you can then tint it yellow, orange, and red as you need to.
Right, exactly. One thing to keep in mind, just like if you don't want to go back and listen to the OSL special, one thing you can do to make it easier for you to figure out how you're going to do your object source lighting, your zenithal highlighting, if you're not doing the straight sun from the top look, is to go to a dark room with your cell phone and then like take a lighter or a flashlight or something that gives off light and take a picture of the model with the flashlight on, and you can usually see like, okay, well, I need to hold it at this angle, and that's a little bit of pre-planning. Like, okay, if you have a picture in your mind but you don't know exactly what angle to hold the flat or to hold your airbrush while you're doing your zenithal highlighting, you can use the dark room method with a flashlight.
Yeah, you mentioned in the special using a lighter, a physical flame, and that gives you a nice organic light, which is a bit softer, a bit more natural than shining an LED torch over it.
Right, and I like it too, especially if you're wanting to do work on, like, say, a pinpoint torch. A lighter gives you a nice source because it's a yellowish orange color, just like a torch would be. And you can move it farther away, you can move it closer, and it's a lot more adjustable because then you only have to deal with 1 or 2 lumens versus 60 to 100 to 500 lumens, which you're going to have to go all the way across the room to get it to diminish a little bit.
That's right. It's a naturally diffused light, whereas your LEDs are really high contrast. And the other trick, of course, is to take a photograph and convert it to black and white. Once you've done that, so you can see the highlight and shadow portions of your miniature of where you want to see the lights changing.
Exactly. Black and white photography is really super helpful. Also, another thing you can do is you can flip it negative as well, and that'll help out. It just gives you a different perspective. It's really funny how things will look good on a normal picture, but if you flip it in negative, you'll see little things that you didn't before, like, oh, okay, so this is extending down here. I didn't see it in the original picture because it was too light for me to really notice. Now, zenithal highlighting, this is going to be one of the shorter episodes because honestly, there really isn't a lot to zenithal highlighting. And it's super easy to practice. Just go grab yourself a miniature that you're wanting to play around with, sticky tack it or spray the entire thing. Now, one thing you can do is if you want to skip one of the steps, is you can just base it completely in your low color. Like if you're wanting to use a dark blue, base the entire miniature in that dark blue or the purple, or if you just want to go from black, you can base it in that black, and then you can take it, you can poster tack the miniature to like a Lazy Susan. If you airbrush and you don't have a Lazy Susan, go to Walmart. They're like $10, a little Lazy Susan. It's going to be over in the dinnerware aisle. Trust me, best investment ever. But poster tack it to your Lazy Susan or onto a holder, then you put that on the Lazy Susan. And what you want to do, and for the people who may know them as other things, a Lazy Susan is basically a little turntable. A lot of them are made out of bamboo or wood. You can find some that are glass, but they have a little base that sits still. You put it down and you can actually spin it. They're supposed to go into the middle of the table where you can put the salt and pepper and all the condiments, and you can spin it around. But it works amazing. I own 2 of them for airbrushing, and there have been times that I've literally stacked both of them on top of each other, one at an offset. It's kind of weird, but yes. One of those things where one Lazy Susan is $10 if you're an airbrusher. You can find them as turntables in the airbrush supply, and you'll pay like $30. Just go to a big box store, IKEA, Walmart, Kmart, Target, and buy one that's branded for dinnerware. You can find them for $7 to $10. Best investment as an airbrush artist that you can make. And since they're wood, you can actually drill into it and modify it as well, add holders and all that stuff. But I digress. Basically what you want to do is you want to put the miniature put it on the thing, and then take your lighter color, whether it's going to be white or whatever, and you're going to airbrush it. And what you want to learn how to do a nice gradient from the bright spot on the top. That's where the brightest point of the miniature should be, down to your blacks. And you don't want the bands to be noticeable. So like you can start it almost at 0 and slowly spin it. And then as you do it, you can move the airbrush down, and you want to slowly go from that bright white on the tops of the piece and then move it down, and you want to make it where the middle areas has more of a gray tone. Or ultimately, you can honestly just hit it from about 30-degree angle down to make it where you have that stark contrast of super white on top, black on the bottom, and then use your normal colors and blend it from there. That's something you can do as well if you don't feel comfortable with the blending from white to black.
Yeah, it all depends on what kind of light fall off you want to achieve. If it's a high contrast, then sort of, blast it and stop. If you want a nice diffused look, then practice your gradient, your shading.
Yeah, it's if you want to do a sketch style, you want the high contrast Zenithyl highlighting style. If you want to do something like Sinjin or Ben Comet or Matt or any of those guys, that's what you're going to want to do. If you want something that's more natural looking, a more standardized miniature, then you'll want to do a little bit more blending on it and bring the lighter colors down a little bit more, and you want to create those gray scales. So if you want to do painting styles like myself, then that's what you'll want to do. You can also experiment. Like if anybody's who's seen a couple of my paintings, I'll go from white on top, purple on the bottom. There's a stripe of red around the middle of it, and then there's a stripe of green on the sides, and people are like, what's going on? And then you hit it with flesh tones, and they're like, oh my God, what happened? The concept and the idea behind Zenithyl highlighting is that once you apply your normal color over the piece, you want to still be able to see some of that Zenithyl highlighting through the colors. So you don't want to go super heavy and just knock everything out, because at that point, why? What you want to do is, like, if you want to paint something blue and you do the Zenithyl highlighting, you paint the blue over it, and when you look at it, it looks like the same color blue, but the top looks like a brighter version of that same color blue, and the bottom looks like a dark, and it's to fool a person's eyes. So that's the purpose of Zenithyl highlighting, is to make it where you're adding shadows underneath the paint versus on top of it. You're not applying, and you can still do it on top too. You can deepen those shadows with a little bit of purple, a little bit of dark blue. You can brighten them up a little bit with a little bit of white in your base color. But the ultimate idea is, once you apply the Zenithyl highlighting in the base color, you should look at the model and it should look all the same color, but at the same time it should look like it's already shaded a little bit and already has some highlights applied to it as well.
That's right. It's a sophisticated version of pre-shading.
No, it's effectively pre-shading. I mean, I've heard people call this basic thing like 4 different things. It's pre-shading.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose you're creating your shadows underneath and you're painting on the top. So yes, it's pre-shading because it's not post-shading.
Yeah. Right, and it's pre-shading, but you're also adding highlights to the pre-shading as well and making everything nice and poppy and everything else. But thank you, everyone. Do you have anything that you want to end off with, Peter?
Nothing at all.
I like this. We're like, this will be a nice short one. 16 minutes later, we're back to normal length. Yeah. But anyways, folks, thank you for tuning in. This episode is actually brought to you by Models Workshop After Hours UK, which should be launching the Monday right before this one comes out. So if you haven't yet, make sure to go and download the UK podcast where it has... Peter, tell us about the UK podcast. I mean, you're here.
Well, I am here, yeah. So it's me, it's Chloe, it's Simon and Ian, and we're sitting around talking about painting and other things. Basically the same as you, Yeji, Clint, Gildy, and Jim, but with a funny accent.
Well, kind of normal for you, funny for us.
Well,
but
yes,
it's going to be the same basic idea behind it, where it's the same formatting too. It's to the point where we've even sat down and talked about what processes we're going to record on the audio. So there's not, when you listen to it, there's not a huge difference between it. It's just the hosts are different. Same basic concept, a little bit of hobby talk, a little bit of scale model talk, probably some crude jokes and some rude humor and some different slang. You bloody cheeky bastard, you.
Yes, indeed.
But yes, definitely check it out. You don't have to go do anything special. Just make sure to go on your subscription feed and hit the Models Workshop After Hours UK. And it's episode 1. So yeah, doing big things. Big things.
Yes, it's quite an exciting new thing.
Yeah, tell me about it. I'm like I was like, yay, we're getting bigger. But all right, thank you for listening to Just the Facts. Come back next Friday where we'll tickle your ear hole with a little bit more of the factoid style stuff and your interesting little facts. If you want a particular subject to be talked about, then reach out to us over at facebook.com/The Models Workshop and give us a buzz and let us know what you want to talk about. You can also hit us up over at Mini Model Paint on Twitter for Peter or myself at NWH Podcast. And let us know what you want to talk about. One requested topic is actually how to transfer paint from bottle to bottle for people who want to go to dropper bottles with GW paints. So don't worry, we got you. We're planning a good episode on that, and we're testing some things out to make sure that we're able to do a good job on that particular Just the Facts.
Super.
Spectacular. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.